Hello everyone, my name's Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and on today's Leaders in Fire and Safety podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Glenn Hutchins and Alec Purdie from Quelfire. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So, excellent. Thanks, Alex. Good morning, Glenn. I am going to turn to you first. Alec, I want you to tell me a little bit about your role within Quelfire and anything else interesting that the listener might like to know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm the technical manager at Quelfire, so my role is to ensure that our products are being used correctly, especially as our products are used for service penetrations or linear gaps. It can be quite a complex nature to make sure you're following the right guidance and that. So I spend a lot of my time ensuring, the design teams and architects are using the correct product, using it in the right way, and following any rules and guidelines about that sort of thing.
Excellent. And we will delve into that role a little bit deeper as we go into this podcast. Glenn, turning to you, I understand you're the business development manager at Quelfire, which in itself comes with a very high bar to achieve. And tell us a little bit more about that and overall what Quelfire brings to the market.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, so obviously, as you say, I'm the business development manager, which involves obviously speaking to customers, clients on a daily basis, both about how Quelfire can support them, but also, as you can imagine, the industry that we're in, it does come with a level of technical knowledge and expertise. So personally, I'm involved with speaking to customers, obviously answering their queries, also involved in training and things like that as well. Generally speaking, Quelfire, as Alex alluded to, are manufacturers and suppliers of passive fire protection products for service penetrations and linear gap seals. One of our core focuses is on educating the industry, providing as much information as possible. We conduct a lot of CPDs and training sessions, as I mentioned, not just to customers, but also to those that are involved in the design process and construction in general. So, architects, designers, even M&E contractors, that sort of thing as well as obviously the fire stopping contractors, those that are actually physically installing the products. And our main goal really is to improve the industry as a whole. So it's not just about selling products. It's not just about, the sales side of it. It's about providing tested solutions. But the main reason behind that, to improve the industry and make it easier and more compliant and safe for everyone who's building buildings.
Yeah, and what is a breath of fresh air, which we always see from Quelfire, is that focus also on education and the whole issue that we seem to have in the industry currently is the lack of education, the lack of competence, and the knowledge and understanding. And by putting that out there and providing the opportunity for that acquisition of knowledge, there's no excuse for people to be saying, "Well, we got it wrong." We've got to start saying we get it right every time, and that way, life safety remains the positive. One of the things that's been interesting for the fire and life safety industry was the introduction of the Building Safety Act in 2022, and also Gateway 2 to that. Alec, I'm going to come to you in relation to that and give the listener a very brief overview of the aim of the Act and what you see as the positive changes that have come from that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, the overall aim, obviously, there have been a number of events, quite tragic events, including Grenfell, that were sort of a catalyst to get the industry to change. So one of those implementation was to bring in the Building Safety Act, and some of it actually happened before 2022. So we actually had Gateway 1, I think, came in about August 2021, which was one of the first initial steps. And there's other gateways too, which I'll go into in a second, and 3, which should hopefully be coming down the line. It's already in place, but I don't think any buildings reach that level yet. So we're still early days of that side of things. And there's other things. As a manufacturer, there is going to be some changes for ourselves in the introduction of the CCPI to ensure that what we're saying is relevant and correct, and a few other things. But yeah, the sort of positive things that have come from that, because again, I like we discussed before we actually started this podcast, there is a lot of negativity out there, but I want to more focus on the positive things. So the Building Safety Act is a very positive thing. It's obviously going to be for a little bit an uphill battle because it's all new. It's a lot of change, and no one likes change typically, but it is required. So one of the big positive changes, I think, is just the emphasis on designing a building, making sure it's compliant, so that when we go to the build stage, we're not being tripped up by any hurdles, having any issues, and then relying heavily on questionable judgments or stuff that's untested, and just that relative unknown. So the positive there is to ensure buildings are actually being built in a way that should be safe and avoid any tragedies happening in the future. So that was a big change. I think it was positive. Another positive change, going back to sort of the education, is it kind of highlighted the fact that the industry was severely lacking in knowledge and learning. And there is kind of a sort of an age gap as well. So I are one of those people that joined post-Grenfell, the industry. So I've actually only done about 5 years now. And when I first joined, there was quite a severe lack of knowledge, but I went out there, I found the people that are willing to give their time. A lot of them give their time for free. A lot of them do it outside of their day-to-day job. So I've done stuff with the IFE, the ASFP, the FIA. There are plenty of people out there to get their knowledge. So I think that was one of the positive changes. It did show that there was quite a high level of incompetency, not necessarily people's fault. It's just the way that the industry has been. So that is changing. We're seeing people educate things, early engagements happening more, conversations, questions are being asked. The amount of questions as a technical manager I get now compared to just a year or 2 years ago is unmeasurable. Actually, it's actually quite overwhelming in a good way, because it's good that people are asking those questions. So yeah, that's some of the positivities. And I think once we do reach the top of the hill, it's going to take a little bit of time. We're all still learning from the BSR, from design teams, manufacturers, manufacturers. We are still all having to find out new things. I think once we get there and we crack this, sort of crack the code to make it work, I think it will be a positive and much easier future for all of us in the construction industry.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and applaud the whole industry in terms of what I call the support organisations, IFE, ASFP, etc., and also the trade journals. That we're all in the game for the same thing, is to enhance knowledge and understanding, and to provide an additional level of competence. But one of the things that jumped out to me on Gateway 2 was the removal of the building control approval application and the deposit of plans before building actually starts, in terms of ensuring that what's going to happen is right before the digger cuts a hole in the ground. And I suppose hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you would have liked to think that was what the previous route to build would have tried to achieve, but probably not. But that must provide a great level of confidence, Alec, in terms of the knowledge being provided at that early stage, rather than trying to play catch up later.
Yeah, it's been quite refreshing actually, because we're able to deal with things at a lot of an earlier stage. And one of the positive things, again, I sort of didn't mention before, is the collaboration now. So it is now becoming quite clear that no one person is a subject matter expert in everything when it comes to buildings. So you need that early engagement with all the right people to talk about the certain things. So yeah, getting in early, talking about the plans, and then putting it together and highlighting, even for some people that I work with, even just this week alone, highlighting things that are very common things to myself that like you should be aware of, but they're not aware of. And that's opening up the doors to people's minds and understanding where the pitfalls are, where the positive are, and what we need to change. But also as an industry, for ourselves as a manufacturer, it's highlighting certain things for us. Again, it's a positive that the test standards are lacking, the guidance documents are lacking, which is why the government's pushing for the BSR to sort of update all the guidance documents, etc. So that the Building Safety Act from a positive is highlighting these weak areas and showing how it should be. And yeah, I agree with you what you said. Again, I was quite new to the industry. For me, it was common sense to design and then build. I never understood the concept of building whilst designing on the thing, because especially with when it comes to fire protection, we're not talking about the other aspects of a building, but passive fire protection is a very complex subject. I mean, just alone, I mean, people can obviously just think of mainly fire doors or stuff like that. But when you're talking about service penetrations, the variety and the rules and the way to make things be protected is astronomical, really. It's quite hard and complex subject. So to think anyone has all the answers and they didn't need to speak to anyone and design things properly was a bit naive. And I think that again, the positive change is that's sort of been highlighted to people and they're now looking to engage and do it correctly. And I'm seeing quite a lot more. We get a lot more interaction. As I said, my day-to-day is very busy interacting with all the tier ones and now tier twos especially, and with the high-rise building applications. It was a very slow process. I think Gateway 2 started in November, didn't see very many new build applications. Obviously, I know they had a big overhaul of the older buildings that had to go through that scheme, but now it's rapidly growing. So there's quite a lot of applications we're overseeing. I will say that many are approaching it from different ways. So it'd be interesting to see later on in the year when the BSR starts obviously getting through these a bit more quicker, to see what's working, what needs to change. I think we need that feedback. I think that's what we're missing as an industry at the moment, is the conversation to say, okay, this is what we like to see, this is what we don't like to see, this is what we need. We still have that unsure thing, but that's good. I think it needs to have that level of unsureness now, because again, positive is, let's find out the weaknesses at this stage. It's still growing, and find out where we need to adapt, evolve, and learn from. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah, and there's a lot of eyes on the industry, quite rightly, with the way things have been handled, and whether or not it was timely enough in the way that it was handled post Grenfell tragedy. Excuse me. But what I think one of the things I find interesting, and you talked about BSI, and there are a number of organizations that provide codes and standards, but in relation to BSI, then yes, I think we're all looking at how quickly they're going to start moving in relation to providing this. Passive fire protection is often overlooked, but to me, passive fire protection is the most important part of building safety integrity. In terms of, you talked about the compartment penetrations and the ceiling. We all see these nightmare pictures of the beautiful artworks of pink expanding foam and every color in between, and it amazes me that there are people still out there that are uneducated enough to think that that's suitable and sufficient for a building that is going to rely on that product for life safety in the future. But again, it's this education, and we need to be very clear at the importance of education. And one of the other parts of Gateway 2 is that mandatory reporting requirements. And there's words. The words are fine. It's the actions that are going to come out of that as well. And if we think that one piece of legislation is going to solve the issue overnight, then I think we're misguided. But what we do really need to see is some very, very sharp teeth. They're not afraid to bring these people to task, to identify the way in which they are behaving and putting lives at risk, because very often it is financial gain over life safety. But while we've got companies such as Quelfire and the organizations supporting the industry, then there's no excuse that education's not there available. So in respect of where we're going, Glenn, in terms of that early engagement, we talk about a term, design then build. So Give me an understanding of that. I'm here learning very much. I was a 32-year career firefighter, and passive and active fire is something relatively new to me. So I am all ears, my friend.
Yeah, I guess the term design then build speaks for itself to a certain extent. It's what Alec's been saying about the Gateway 2 process and everything. It's ultimately getting the design correct before you start doing anything physically on site. With that early engagement, I think there's a lot more involved than a lot of people potentially think. In terms of the information, the detail that's required at an early stage in the design process is a lot more than has previously been done. So what we're talking about here is different trades, different parties being involved that aren't directly responsible for the fire stopping, if that's the right expression to use, the likes of the M&E contractors, MEP designers, dry liners, trades and parties that aren't necessarily directly involved in installing fire stopping products, but their trades, the things that they're doing does have a direct impact on a correct fire stopping solution being applied. So that early engagement, that design stage, it is critical to get all of that detailed information on your service types, fire ratings required, substrate types that are going to be used, and then completing a full and detailed design right down to service spacings, specific insulation types, specific seals that are going to be used around those services, knowing exactly what's going to be done, and then taking it to the build stage. I guess, again, what Alec referred to previously about the traditional method of construction, designing while you're building, that's where things can rapidly start to fail. If services are being run without a tested solution being considered for the fire stopping of them, that ultimately means that you're not going to have a compliant solution because you don't know what your spacings need to be, you don't know what opening sizes need to be. So ultimately getting that design done, finished, complete, down to a minute level of detail to an extent, so that you know exactly what you're going to be installing, is absolutely critical. Once that's been done, then you can start building. Then you can start running your services, start putting your structure up, so your floors, your walls, that sort of thing, and ultimately sticking to that plan. The build element is almost just as important as design, because it's all very well having a correct and suitable design, but then if those trades then don't follow that design, you're back to square one again, you're back to the same problem. So having that quality management on site is so important, and there's certainly companies, the likes of Wilmot Dixon, for example, that we're working with, that have a very strict process of quality management on site. So getting the design right, looking at all those details that I've mentioned, but then also on site, taking control of how things are installed, like the services, how the walls are constructed, making sure that quality is there and things are being done in accordance with the design.
Yeah, exactly. It's putting in place a culture that explains the importance of these things. It puts the pride back into the construction, in terms of get it right first time. If it takes 10 minutes longer, then it's going to save so much time and money in the long run. And it's where we've now, I see that Gateway 2 has brought in the roles and responsibilities with the principal designer, principal contractor, and those roles. But the briefing, the understanding of the guys and the girls that are undertaking the work needs to be fully encompassed. So it's a bit like saying to a carpenter, hang that door, without saying the reason that door is important and the reason why corners can't be cut. And the same with the penetrative sealing. It's knowing why it's being done. And I think a lot of time there is not enough education of the people that are contracted to carry out the vital task of fitting these pieces of equipment properly. And this is where I applaud Quelfire and the other organisations that make education as important, if not more important, than selling the products. And unfortunately, there are a lot of companies out there that all they're interested in is selling the product and not really providing the backup service in terms of how you use it. So yes, it's a positive. I agree that the organisation of the building sector was in need of a huge overhaul. That was also echoed and amplified by bona fide companies such as yours that were providing equipment and also services, but weren't being applied in the way in which they were required to be. So if we look now at where we would like to think that we're going to be sat in 12 to 24 months in terms of the improvement or the road to, I was going to say perfection, the road to improvement, I think. Alec, give me your idea of utopia and then a realistic view of where you think we might have got to.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I do think it's going to be a little bit longer. So obviously, my utopia would be that everyone gets it right, understands it really quick and easy, and it's moved on very smoothly. But I do think, and this is where I think to stay positive, people need to realise that this is still slightly an uphill challenge, but it's something that we are working together to overcome. So I think within the next 12 months, if we start there, I think we would have started seeing buildings going through the Gateway 3 process, because we're not even talking about that yet. And I think that's going to have the challenges. That's going to highlight, again, issues with the Gateway 2 that still might not have been flagged yet, that we'll need to overcome. Because, again, with Gateway 3, if they're not going to get that sign-off certificate, you're not going to be able to occupy the building. So there could be empty buildings literally sat there, which is going to be time and money for main contractors. So we're going to see what impact that has there. But I'm hoping if people are doing the Gateway 2 process correctly, they're doing this early engagement, they're gathering all the information. And this gathering of information should not be a new thing to a lot of people. Going back to sort of your earlier point where you said, I think the industry needs a bit of teeth. I do actually hope, I would like to say we wouldn't get this, but I do think that the industry and the regulator needs to be coming out in force to show there are consequences for bad actions. And I think if we've done that, one of the things that people have not been aware of is Building Regulation 38, which I think has been around for 20 years, if I'm right. And that is about handing over all the information to the building owner at the end of the project. And this highlighted the fact that when we even ask simple questions, we're not even getting the information we need to help support people. And we get that blank stare, and you're straight away thinking, how many projects have you worked on? And this is quite a simple question I'm asking. You should know the answer, and it should be something that you'll be passing on to the building owner. So I think the Gateway 2s are ramping up quite heavily now. So I think in 12 months, we'll see the successful ones, and we'll be able to learn from the lessons of the ones that are still either slightly struggling or have taken a few more attempts to go through. But I think we're going to be in a much better position there. And then 24 months from there, I think, again, we'd have started seeing the Gateway 3s, the Gateway 2s. And I think we'll be able to sort of identify now what the BSR needs. Hopefully then it's found out what it needs to improve, and it's implemented those, and hopefully it'll be a bit quicker. Obviously, going back to what you said earlier, I mean, with the time frame to implement all this has been very slow, but I think that's another thing that needs to, I know we've been dragging our heels and stuff like that, but the behaviors need to train. I think people are starting to get more pride in the work, that they're starting to understand the reasons why. There's a lot of, going back to what Glenn said earlier, I work with a lot of architects and MEPs and other trades that may not have realized how much impact they had. But when we've had that conversation, gave them the understanding of why, they've sort of realized, okay, this makes sense. And that's where the education side of things is absolutely important. So again, one of the things I hope for in the next 12 to 24 months is start to see the emergence of not necessarily new talent, but we've got to ensure that the knowledge is being passed down to the next sort of generations and so on. So there are people now starting to retire that have been, absolutely amazing to the industry. You had like Joe Celia from the FIS. He's just, well overdue. Obviously, he's earned that time, but he's now retired, and that knowledge we want to make sure that knowledge has been passed down. So again, the next 12 to 24 months, hopefully we start to see those rising stars and the people that can help shape the industry as a whole, because we don't want to have that sort of lull where there's no knowledge and no sharing. So yeah, that's where I hope that the next 12 to 24 months will lead to.
Yeah, I've wrote a couple of notes there where you were talking, Alec, and in terms of the old, experienced, and wise stalwarts of the industry retiring, this is where the whole succession planning needs to start at an early stage, and rather than bringing somebody in at the point that you've given the gold watch out to the retiree, you need to bring them in at least 12 months before to get that knowledge out of their head and into the new person. One of the areas that I am working on at the moment is in relation to the role of facilities management and facilities managers within the life cycle of a building, and it's crazy that what we see at the moment is that a facilities manager is normally brought in at the point that the keys are thrown across the desk from the contractor to the occupier, and the facilities manager is expected to know the whole way in which that building operates. And I'm currently working on a presentation where we look at the phases of the building from that idea in the head right the way through to demolition, and the fact that the facilities manager needs to be there in every single one of those, because it's that key person that's got that knowledge and understanding. But that in itself is another opportunity for a chat. Glenn, I'm going to come back to you as we work towards wrapping this up. From a business development manager's perspective, I think that if I was looking around the industry for products that I needed to fulfill my requirement in terms of passive fire protection, I'd be looking at best value. And one of the things that jumps off the page for Quelfire is you're not just providing a product, you're providing a education service, you're providing an understanding. And that to me is the unwritten value of working with companies like yours. So that must make your job quite easy when you provide that additional added benefit.
Yeah, it certainly should do, and does to an extent. Yeah, for sure. It's great to be able to back up, obviously, supplying a product with the support and tested solutions that we do have at Quelfire. I think probably one of the things that is important for people to understand is that gone are the days of just buying a fire collar, gone are the days of just buying a tube of sealant. What I do suggest is that you're not necessarily buying a product. What you're buying is a tested solution, and indeed that's the whole method that should be the case when it comes to passive fire protection solutions for service penetrations. What you're actually paying for is that test evidence, the huge scope of tested solutions that a manufacturer like Quelfire has. The products are almost incidental. First and foremost, you're looking for the most applicable tested solution for your application. Then the products come after that, and that's the most important thing, I think, is being able to get those tested solutions and get the support quickly and easily. Be able to get in touch with the technical team like we have, headed by Alec. And get those answers quickly, get that support that you need when you're on site, or certainly when you're at design stage. If you need answers to questions, you need details, you need solutions, that is ultimately what you're paying for. You're not just paying for a fire bat or a fire collar or whatever the case might be. So yeah, I think what you say is absolutely correct, that the value in that support, that education that's available is excellent.
Yeah, and knowing that there's somebody like Alec at the end of the telephone or on the end of an email response to give you that reassurance and almost the arm around the shoulder when you're embarking on something new. And the level of quality and Quelfire, yes, Quelfire begins with a Q, quality begins with a Q, and I think it both marries in very nicely. And I would urge listeners to this involved in the whole passive fire protection market is to do your due diligence, to look at what you're actually buying and ensure that just because somebody says that it meets the required standards, have you actually checked and looked at the documentation that shows that? Have you gone and approached the certifier and say, I'm looking at this certificate, is it right? Because with everything that's gone on in the likes of Grenfell tragedies and fires that we see on a daily basis, people are too trusting, and there's a lot of people out there that are looking to make a quick shilling and then disappear off the face of the earth. So if you take anything else, if the only thing you take away from this is that you need to do your due diligence and you need to be speaking to experts like Alec and Glenn, then I think we've achieved what we wanted to do. Alec, I'm coming to you to provide us with your final thoughts and whether there's any little pebbles you want to throw in the pond just to let the ripples work their way around for people to think about long after they've listened to us three chat on a grey and dark morning in February. But we will be sure to take note. So give us your final wisdom, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate what you just said there as well. Yeah, and I want to echo that. I mean, sort of what I said earlier is I think the industry has changed. Going back to, it's shocking that we still see pink foam, for example, but that goes back to the education thing. I think people need to realize you don't just read the headline of a news story, you've got to read the article. So don't just focus on a product data sheet. Don't just focus on the title on a tin of pink foam that says fire rated. You need to look at deeper into it, make sure you're checking the right information. And if you're unsure, ask. If you're not getting the answers, then going back to that thing where are they just selling you a product or are they selling you a tested system and they're willing to, I'm quite sometimes deemed the anti-sales team, I suppose, is a thing because I want to make sure things are done right. I will happily highlight all the elephants in the room, as I would say, just to make sure people, because we want to sleep at night, we want to make sure, I live in an apartment myself, so it's got obviously passive fire protection measures and stuff like that, and I want to make sure myself, my family and my neighbours are safe. So, I'm a firm believer of do unto yourself what you do to others, and that's what I'm hoping we pass. And I think the behaviors thing that we mentioned sort of briefly earlier is the big factor. I think people need to start understanding that their attitude and behavior are going to be very impactful in this nature. So if you can take anything away from this, knowledge can be learned. There are plenty of us out there to learn away, but you've got to be willing to learn. You've got to be willing to change. You've got to have pride in your work. So it all comes down to that behavior factors. And we are there to help. For any that have already worked with us, obviously, please share this thing and echo this. But if you haven't, please give us a try. Like I said, don't just focus on products. It's the background sort of activity that's required. So please use us. We're always happy to help and educate. And again, obviously, this isn't just about service penetration linear gaps. There are other areas of passive fire protection as well. There are certain manufacturers that are specialists in those fields, again, like Quelfire, are going out of their way to try and educate the industry. And I think this collaboration and working together is only going to see things improve. It is getting better. It doesn't look like it, but even in the few years I've been in, I've seen a massive improvement. There's still a lot of work to do. And I know, and again, we will stay positive that it's a challenge. If it was easy, we'd all be able to do it, and but it's not. So we need to embrace that, work together, and hopefully it'll be a brighter and positive, more future.
Yeah, I totally agree. You've summed that up perfectly, and it is a challenge, but it's a challenge that those that are actually committed are willing to take, and they're willing to work together regardless of where your commercial focus lies. It's something that we've got to embrace, because nobody wants to be waking up to the images like we've seen in London, in Valencia, and other places across the world. I think what's good for me to draw focus on here is that, and I've purposely left it to the end of the podcast, is what I've listened to you guys talk about is hugely satisfying, especially when I look at the Quelfire mission, where it's to support all parties involved in the design and installation of service penetration seals while educating the industry on the importance of life safety and early engagements in fire stopping. And I applaud you guys, because that's not something that we've even looked at or we've even discussed in our brief. But having read that out now, it's exactly what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. So it's I often find that when you scratch the surface and you go down a bit lower into people's knowledge and understanding, that's when you know if people are true to their word. But believe me, Quelfire, what you certainly see is what you get, and the level of detail, knowledge, and understanding is a credit to you guys and to the company. And we at the International Fire and Safety Journal will spread this far and wide, and do everything we can to work with you guys to get that message out there. I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I've been honoured to be talking with Glenn Hutchins and Alec Purdie from Quelfire. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Duncan.